And if I make updates in the 4D tools, can I bring those changes back to the source scheduling products? Right. I think those are kind of related, all like intertwining.
Bentley's got a strong tie and relationship with Evercam, and having the 4D view where you can see exactly what's happening on site.
Welcome to the BIM Heroes Podcast. In the next episode, we will be joined by Hunter Hayes and Jacqueline Chen from Bentley, and we will be discussing the state of 4D BIM, scheduling, and how Synchro is changing the industry with 4D BIM. Welcome, Hunter and Jacqueline, to the podcast.
I'm Jacqueline Chen. So yes, when I think of this podcast, this is actually I spent 10 years in this 4D BIM space. I started my career in the construction industry as a civil engineer working for a design engineering firm. Then I decided to pursue my passion for 4D BIM. Worked as a senior consultant implementing solutions at Synchro Software Ltd. Later in 2018, with the acquisition, I joined Bentley. Now I'm a technical product manager working on the Synchro 4D products. On a daily basis, I work with developers, work with users and accounts to define product requirements, what features we will be working on, and oversee releases and launches of our products. Yes, I'm excited to be here today.
Fantastic. And maybe on the opposite end of the spectrum, I'm very green into the industry. I started here at Bentley about 3 years ago, and I came from a project management background while I was in university at Temple, in a totally different field and industry, working with automotive development for a Formula SAE race car. And so coming from a very different space, but in that project management field. And currently I've been working at Bentley, started as an account representative, and then working with accounts as an account manager, and then moving into a more product specific role with Bentley as a product sales engineer. And now, I work on a daily basis with customers to understand the requirements of their projects, where Synchro can fit in their portfolio of tools in order to enable better building processes.
Well, that's a great start to this next conversation I'm going to have with both of you. And Jacqueline, this might be where we start with you. Talk a little bit about Bentley as a whole, where it's kind of started and its process of what it was trying to solve, and then how Synchro came about in that acquisition.
So Bentley's commitment is to provide the right solutions for any infrastructure asset, right? Our focus is to cover the life cycle of the project, basically from design, build to operate, and then provide the tools that our users and accounts can use in a connected environment to perform their daily tasks. So Synchro has been in this space for, I think, almost 20 years. And then we've been, I'm very proud to say, we've been in this leading position for quite some time. And it is not a very, I would say it's not a very easy market, because we will face a lot of challenges in terms of connecting the data from different sources. We will be to some extent, I think, disruptive, because we are bringing changes to the processes and the tools, and people sometimes can be reluctant to change, right? So really, I think where it comes down to what I've been working on, or what Synchro has been working on, is that we want to provide that experience to our users in accounts and empower them with the right tools that they can use, and basically let them do their job better with the digital twins, and then empowered by the iTwins technology and all the cloud services that they can use. Yeah, that's my takeaway. Hunter, do you have anything to add, or you want to chime in here?
I think being able to, have all the different teams and players uh, enabled, and seeing how the 4D, model is able to help everyone understand the different processes that are going to be happening on the project is really the most powerful way that 4D BIM is creating change in this space. It's not just the guys in the office who are working on the design or the virtual construction of the model. It's everyone being able to have a stake in that, so that the communication is clear, open, and there's no gaps there.
Talking through this concept, one of the things that you see in the industry, Jacqueline, that I think causes people to not understand 4D is, what is it and what can it do?
Mm-hmm.
And I thought I would, lead into that next question is, what is the definition of 4D BIM? And how does
Right.
Bentley, really try to take that concept to the next level? We understand the fourth dimension, right? Most people believe that, but we don't. What does that mean in the area of construction?
Yes. So I think let's take a step back and then look at what 4D BIM is. I think the so if you read papers and then go back to time, there's like many ways to define it. But I think, to me, it is basically you're adding the fourth dimension, which is time, to your 3D BIM model. In my eyes, apparently, if you talk to any person working in the construction industry, if you mention the time factor, they will really tell you, there's this schedule that has a lot of tasks with start finish dates. That will be how we plan, and that's something that we agree to build based upon. So back to 4D BIM, I think not only time, but I would say what we do, and what our strength is, and then what we do well is really connecting that 3D BIM model to a schedule, right? Or even multiple schedules. The power it brings you is really the introduces a new process, which is called no longer new these days. It's called virtual planning. You are essentially planning your project in a virtual environment where you can see how your model will be gradually built. On the benefits, it has so many benefits. The industry, I would say, is more familiar with those benefits than before, because we have some time developing this process and then developing those tools. So basically, it includes transparency, encourages communication, like Hunter mentioned earlier, right? You can use those tools with better visualization to help the team to collaborate better. It may be easier to have the buy-ins from the project owners. You can use it as use the delivery from it to present to the project team to get their commitment, right? After they can see it, right? So you'll hear this because I have a young daughter at home. After you give them the screen time, right? Rather than looking at the 2D Gantt chart or the static 3D model, you will realize that the beauty of this is really to draw their attention from their busy day-to-day tasks to let them focus on this big screen in front of them, and then integrate that 4D BIM logic in the virtual visual planning process into your, look ahead meetings, right? Daily huddle. Uh, so yes, so that's my understanding. And if I hope I did a good job summarizing its benefits.
Yeah, and Hunter, on your perspective, how do you think that Jacqueline has a lot of that correct? And do you think that how is Synchro really trying to fit in and trying to educate?
So we have been doing a lot of work. I think in the early years after I decided to pursue this 4D BIM career path. We did a lot of work visiting users' offices, even developing the processes, and then trying to do a lot of the standardization, coming up with not only BIM plans, but BIM execution plans. So we, I think our job is not only to provide the tools, but also lead our users and accounts in the process of implementation. Sometimes they just need this hand-holding because it can be a very new concept introduced to the project, and then the project team members are still trying to figure things out. So we play an important role, I think, guiding the users through the process, especially when it's their first time. On the other hand, I think with Bentley's iTunes services, the changes that I've seen over the past 5 years is that we can provide now the cross-platform experience from desktop to web to mobile in a real-time collaboration fashion, right? Basically, our goal is to have this single source of truth for construction, have the data repository that store everything that you need for construction, and leverage different services that we can use, which we wouldn't be able to use in the past. You can turn on maps. You can use the media indexing service to intelligently tag your photos or search for photos powered by computer vision, right? There are just so many connected services that we can leverage today, and adds additional layers to the 4D BIM models, right, to help you and guide you to make better decisions.
And Hunter,
So
from your perspective, how does that relate to scheduling?
I guess to answer the first question, I think within the industry, 4D BIM has been around quite long enough so where a lot of people understand what it can do or what it is versus what it can do. I think a lot of, teams will see the visualization and the simulation, and, from my perspective, a lot of people use it for whether that's, pursuits that they're trying to go after and try and see whether they can win a project. But it has, quite a bit more, growth within the scope of a project from that, just visualization part of it. And I think that's where Jacqueline was getting to with the fact that it's not only just, a desktop platform, it's now extended to where all the different players and stakeholders on the project can actually see and view that model and bring it into their daily tasks versus just being used as, for business pursuits and growing the, the book of business that the companies are working on or trying to, the bids they're trying to win. So I think having that aspect to it where it's now growing from just a visualization tool to a part of everyone's daily work life or work schedule.
Coming from a PM background, what is the connection between scheduling and 40 BIM and where that goes from here?
So, being able to develop out a schedule and or Gantt chart is a very complex, set of, logic that people have to work out. And it's different across so many different industries, but within construction, having different subcontractors working on the project, trying to understand what the next phases are, and then being able to bring that into, a visual representation, so that when you have people working on the project too, when you look at just this big schedule, there can be gaps in the understanding. And I think that's where the 40 aspect can really link everyone together and allow them to get on that same page and understand, okay, this is exactly what's going to be happening. And if there's adjustments that need to be made, you'll likely have, a handful of individuals within your organization making those changes. But for everyone to then understand them through a visual representation it's a game changer.
And Jacqueline, on that note, what do you think the state of BIM, 40 BIM in this industry is? Are we really starting to hit the stride now, or do you think that we still have a ways to go?
Yes, so that is a great question, right? So I've put some thoughts into this. I think if you think about, you're familiar with that technology adoption curve, right? You get the early, like the innovators, then I think the second stage is early adopters. Then it goes into early majority, right? That's always a question. When are we entering early majority? I think this question has many aspects. If I start to think about it, I think we are entering, or we have entered the early majority stage. But since this market is so unique, it's, if you think about it, in the past, probably 5 years, 10 years, we've created new roles or probably new positions within the organization, right? You've never heard of 40 planners like 20 years ago or 15 years ago even, right? We created this, this position, and then we changed some of the functionalities within the organization. I think it's already a win for us. We are making some impact. Back to your question, what's the state and where are we right now, right? I said we're entering early majority, but when I think more into it, it really varies from region to region, right? In our major market, I think, for example, the United States, I think we're doing pretty good here, right? We see some adoption. It really depends on, to what level, right? Is it only for pursuit, or they're actually using it on a daily basis? Yes, we see differences from, country to country. And adoption level, or even whether there is adoption, varies from industry to industry. So that's why I said I think we are entering, or we have entered. I think really, to me, it's also a question mark. But the good thing, the good side of this is that as I mentioned earlier, we are really, the industry is really driven by some of the leading companies that we've seen, and they're still the leaders. It's just, I think, simply because they are very invested in this process, and now they have the knowledge. They sometimes I think, yes, we should have a plan and then attack it, right? But sometimes I also think, hey, just jump on it and just start doing it, right? Document your lessons learned, and then it's part of your unique experience, and just institutionalize this process. So Um, I think, and then, different companies have different adoption level, apparently. So I think we'll still continue to see this kind of pattern, like leaders are staying at the leading position in the process. They are believers. I would say for the rest of the folks, uh, give the technology a little bit of faith. Just, I guess, jump right in and start trying, right? That's what I tell my kid too. Yes, and then we will be able to support them in the process of doing this, right? Pick a project. There's no right or wrong. So yes, to your question, I think that's where we are at today. It's just very interesting dynamics.
And Hunter, from your side, what are you saying on the sales side of things?
I think it goes back to the, how are people are using 4D BIM. It's not that it's easy, because learning the tools and being able to effectively implement them, and even the just from the pursuit perspective, can be quite a challenge. So I think the level of adoption is really dependent on the the upfront energy put into understanding how it can really benefit the the projects that you're working on. And if you see a great deal of value in it from the work that you are currently doing within your organization, then the degree to which you're going to bring it on board grows massively. Now we have a great support system. We've built out a lot of the learning tools that can get people up to speed, but I think it's how quickly or how thoroughly is someone willing to bring it into their suite of tools. Because using it as a niche you know level of assistance for certain, whether it's just pursuits or individual projects, can sometimes slow, I would say, the growth within the 4D BIM space, or the state of the industry. But I think if it can be effectively used on multiple projects across your organization, and then again go deep within the organization, and so across the different teams, then you can see quite a bit of growth and adoption going on.
Which I think leads us into the next part of this conversation, is the challenges and benefits. We'll start with the challenges, and then we'll come back to the benefits. And I think, Jacqueline, one of the things that I see a lot where people have trouble with 4D BIM is twofold. One is the idea of trying to bring something that is a Gantt chart, let's say, in other programs that produce a physical schedule that Hunter would put together with a superintendent, and trying to take those tasks that are all connected and link them to objects in the model. I just want to talk through that concept.
Mm-hmm. So I think, to clarify, you meant tagging the elements with the right task. Right. Okay, great. I like that question. So when really tagging, so there's multiple ways of calling this. In the product that I work on, we call this assigning. So assignment process, assigning the elements to the scheduled activities or scheduled tasks, right? So we actually, from the technical perspective, we provide two ways. One is apparently the traditional manual way. You gotta, I guess, interpret the description of the tasks and trying to understand, when I say place concrete level 1, zone 1, or zone A, which model element or elements that I'm supposed to assign to that task, right? So I think the challenge for this process has been, hey, my schedule is not only one line. I have like 10,000 lines of schedule activities. Are you expecting me to go through the full list of activities and then individually start to assign elements to it? I think that has been the challenge because this task appears to be tedious and repetitive, also time consuming, right? So yes, I presented the challenge here. So that's manual linking, manually assigning. That's the way, at least one of the methods, right? There is also a second method, which really depends on the alignment of your BIM models to, on the other hand, your schedule, right? So the second method really allows you to set up a rule. Just think of it as a query to automatically batch linking the elements to the tasks or activities based on some common property values. However, where do those property or values or parameter values come from, right? Somebody needs to have them ready in the model elements, or yes, on the other hand, apparently in the schedule, whether it's activity codes, task user fields, some keywords in the task names, and they require some standardization and alignment on both sides. And we all know traditionally the BIM department or the VDC department and the planning, scheduling department, if there's one, right? Sometimes I know some organizations even they don't have a separate department for planning, scheduling. It's just combined with estimating department, right? But that's a different story. Like the two departments need to have some alignment, right? Which can be a challenge as well, because whenever, as human, naturally, we don't collaborate. We work as silos. Yes, I think these are the solutions that I guess software vendors provide to users today to tackle the linking process, right? Before you can have the 4D BIM. I want to talk about a little bit of the, when I think of the manual process, right? It's actually not that bad. When I mentioned there may be like 10,000 activities in the schedule, really we know from my experience, not all the tasks will have visual representation, right? They may really, on a good project, they may have like 10 to 20% activities that actually need to be linked, right? The other, I think, I want to be positive, right? The other positive side of this manual process is that we never have, or yes, maybe some companies have better practices. Just think of it as your QC. You're basically QCing your model. Nobody's going to ever look at your model as you do in this process, right? I'm really looking at the individual elements, trying to figure out if the model I want to link to the tasks are available there. And on the other hand, I am really QCing, having some quality control, like review of my schedule. Hey, I see this model elements right here, but where's the task for it, right? I think that's the beauty of that process. But apparently our responsibility is to improve the user experience and then make it even better, more intelligent, so we can try to take that time-consuming factor or impression out of the equation, which should drive more adoption.
Okay. And I think that also plays into, Jacqueline, this whole idea of setting up the model and going back to that.
Mm-hmm.
Because model elements, the model is used for analysis, which you don't want them broke up when you're doing analysis. And
Right.
then for 4D BIM, you want them broke up because you want to be able to see how it's actually going to be built in those different sections as the building starts to be built. And I also think that it's a really interesting point that you mentioned, which was this idea of not all of them are going to be represented. I would go a step further that some of it that's interior, you might not even be able to see a lot of it. So it is a really, big picture idea of the planning, which leads me, Hunter, to the question I have for you, which is if you have a schedule and you're trying to link these and assign these activities that are in the generic schedule that we use in construction, what is the how do we get past this point of updating too? Because it has to be able to push from the dates that you have in your schedule and be able to automatically update the schedule.
I think that's really where, Bentley has thrived in the past, 4 or 5 years with the iTwin platform, and being able to bring in different models that are, across different design authoring tools, and or your schedules being parsed in different places. And when you bring all of these different models or schedules into Synchro through the iTwin connectors, being able to bring in the latest version of that and or revert back to a later version and compare those has never been easier. I mean, you can almost drag and drop and everything will update without breaking any of the previous tasks and elements that you've linked, but only the new ones that have been updated. So being able to then just make the changes that you've done in the schedule or in the model, and then it's very minute details from then on out. So we've really created a workflow through the back end development that Bentley has done, which has made model or schedule updating easier than ever.
And Jacqueline, do you think that is there a bi-directional type integration where, let's say, a project uses a tool to create the schedule, the Gantt chart, and that pushes into Bentley or Synchro, or is it something that you're developing the full process within Synchro?
Yes, so another great question. So I think so maybe let's take a step back and look at the kind of the schedule update process, right? So I think here what you meant was, when I get an updated schedule, if there's existing kind of mechanism to bring the updates to the kind of the 4D tools, and on the other hand, what can be done within the 4D tool related to scheduling? Can I update, or can I add additional tasks? Because sometimes some tasks are simply missing from the schedule. And if I make updates in the 4D tools, can I bring those changes back to the source scheduling products? Right. I think those are kind of related, all like intertwining. So I think I'll start from, whenever there's a schedule updates and how they will get in, and then, the concerns of, do I have to rework my 4D model completely, or yes. So how it works is that basically, um, technical Jacqueline talking, technically, as long as the answer is apparently no. There's minimal amount of work that you need to do. It really depends on how much you have changed in the schedule, in the source planning scheduling product, right? We've developed a mechanism, basically, the synchronization process, synchronized from the source, currently is manually triggered. Because you want to make sure all the updates are ready before you actually bring them into our product. And the mapping is really based on either the internal IDs or the activity IDs, if you're familiar with basically the IDs. We need some way of mapping. As long as those are maintained, your work there's no rework per se, right? However, we know that it's not an ideal on the projects you work on or I work on. It's never in this ideal situation that everything's really maintained well. Um, what you want to avoid is really to you keep the ID as the same, sure, good job, but they tweak the description of the activity. So uh, using the same example, it previously, the original schedule says place concrete slab level 1 zone A, right? You decided to change the description, the name of the task. Now it becomes place concrete slab level 2 zone A, right? So imagine like that task has some elements associated with it already in um, synchro, and then upon synchronization, right? The elements tagged to the task, the link is maintained, but the elements tagged to the same activity is wrong, right? Because you're supposed to link to the level 1 task, but now you have it linked to the level 2 task. So those are there are nuances in the process, but it's not something that we don't do. It's something that we've actually been supporting for probably over 10 years. It's just not a feature I built. It's the PMs prior to me. They built it and then they've thought through this, right? The other side of things is that after really, the second part of it actually, after you brought the schedule in, what if I want to make changes? Can I make changes? And what if I want to add something? What if I want to delete something, right? These are totally possible. These are the common things that you do well with it. I think, in my opinion, any 4D BIM product that claims that they do 4D BIM related to schedule, right? You should have some scheduling planning capabilities in your product, right? Because it's a very common task and it's something that users need. And after you make those changes, what's important and what differentiates us from others is that we have our own scheduling engine. So you can actually compute the changes and then understand the changes you made and then how it's going to impact your downstream activities, whether the dates are pushed out, whether the plan finish is calculated based on the duration and the plan start after you input those data. Another key difference is that I think that's the third part of this big question is after you made those changes in the 4D BIM product, right? I'm just trying to like make the visualization and plan better. After I make all my changes, can it go back, right?
Yep.
To the source scheduling product? The answer is apparently yes. Another unique thing that we do is that our integration with source scheduling products are bidirectional. So there's this synchronization process. You can sync in, synchronize from, or synchronize to. It really depends on how, whether the planner on the project or the scheduler on the project, whether they're comfortable taking those changes, because they really, at the end of the day, they really own that part. So it's their decision to make, and then for the team to discuss. Our job is really to provide the functionalities, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
And I think that's a good point to talk about is the plan versus actual and who makes those changes, right? A lot of, contractors here in the US, including ours, we have somebody like myself that's the virtual design and construction manager that is building out the model piece and connecting that to the task. But the project manager and superintendent are building the schedule, having those two together to make those assignments and linking process occurs. And then, the biggest question that always gets asked of the project manager and the superintendent is, okay, I want to make adjustments to what I know, which is the schedule. I want that to push into the 4D so I can see that play out. I want to be able to understand here's what we planned, here's what actually occurred. And then the question that I have is, how do we make that process better?
How to make that process better? Think, I, okay. I think ideally I would want just like what Bentley iTwin services does, right? So um, we have this thing, some kind of utility that's called when you build the iModel, right? There is something called iModel connectors. Ideally, I think I would want a connector for the schedule as well. Basically, what it does is that it does the processing of the original uh, formats, right? Then you can set up like a more routine schedule, like how often I want to do it. Of course, it has the capability to manually trigger it, but you will be able to since you have the repository for the project and then all of your documents, forms are supposed to be in that repository, I would think schedule plays an important role in the construction and project management, the CM process. So I think that schedule will need to be part of that process, and then some automation needs to happen there. Uh, we are not there yet, but I think it is the direction that I'm in my personal view. I think that's the direction that I want to see, and then to make the data exchange process much easier for our user, especially, as you mentioned, your project does have the need to see the changes faster and sooner, right? And another solution apparently is that instead of going back to the source scheduling program, right? I'm always excited to see users start to add more tasks, updating the tasks within the tools that we provide, right? But we also understand apparently there's a reason why you want to do it, or add it to your plan in the source scheduling planning product for sure. Um, that's one of the reasons we provide those functionalities for rescheduling, recalculation, and the capability to just empower, let the I think superintendents who's going to work on the project have their hands on the tools and then make it more easily accessible to them. Yes. Did I answer your question?
No, that's perfect. And
Great.
Hunter, I think the next piece of this would be, okay, now that the superintendent has kind of got everything prepared, we've got the connections made, we've got the schedule in place. And now let's say we're having a subcontractors meeting and we're saying, okay, in the next 3 weeks, here's what needs to happen. Well, when we looked in the past, we had this schedule, and most of the time they were like, yep, we can accomplish that. And then 3 weeks would come and it wouldn't be complete. But with the advent of 4D BIM, I think it has done a really big service to this, because now not only can you look at the full schedule, but you can really start to, dive down into the 3 week look ahead and say, look, this is what we need you to complete in the next 3 weeks for us to hit our dates. Let's just talk about that concept. Starting with Hunter.
So I guess the question is how
visually we can use the 3 week look ahead now within the BIM schedule.
Oh, okay. Yes. Yeah. So I there's many different ways that you can, look at the 4D data within the model, and where we've developed the Synchro platform is to, bring it into the hands of everyone who can actually, use it in their daily tasks. And, we've got web-based project management tools. Everyone might know Synchro 4D as the scheduling engine that really powers what, the visualization aspect, or, the simulation tool that is Synchro. But now we've extended that platform out to have project management tools and field tools. And so we have, what is known as synchro control in our suite of project management tools. And this really gives a visual representation of that model with just the schedule. Now, it may not have the capabilities within it to make adjustments to that schedule, but you can really hone in on certain start and finish dates, be able to see just that, time frame that you're looking at, and navigate around the model, be able to zoom in, select different tasks, model elements, and it will bring up all that data that is inputted into Synchro 4D, but in a easily consumable and visual representation that doesn't have this high technical degree of, or barrier to entry that Synchro 4D has. So it can really give the guys in the trailers planning things out and looking at the schedule an idea of what are the 3 weeks going to look like. And I think whether they've hit that and making the adjustments, that goes to the communication that needs to happen between the planning teams and the BIM teams, and being able to make those adjustments thereafter. But being able to use Synchro Control, which is a web-based tool, and navigate around the model in an easy to use platform and see the schedule tasks, gives those teams the ability to see those look aheads and be able to share with everyone on site exactly what should be happening, and then take a look back at where they expected to be and see where they are currently.
And Jacqueline, that's the thing, is we do have the challenges on the front end, but once the challenges of the front end are complete, and they'll only get better in trying to solve that with what you're trying to develop, but the benefits outweigh it once we get past that. I think that's what I wanted to really dive into after Hunter's comments there. It's just the benefit of the 3 week look ahead, trying to get back on the schedule, just trying to figure out the different benefits from it.
Yes, I think there are different ways to use the visual plans, apparently, before, during the across the construction phases, right? Before a construction, apparently you're trying to better prepare for the plan, right? For the upcoming work. Yes, and during construction, we see adoption not only in the 3 week look aheads that we run on the job site, right? We also see what I mentioned earlier, the daily huddle in front of the big screen, right? And Hunter mentioned a good point that I kind of forgot to mention. The 4D BIM model with Bentley right now, because it's a cross-platform kind of technology. You have the 4D BIM model on your tablet, on the web, right? Anyone can go in and look at, or just project it on a big screen and hit the play button. You've got the dates. Basically, you scrub forward to a specific day in the future. That's where you're supposed to be, right? Yeah, you can, of course, with the actualized, with your actuals, you can go back to the past. We used to call it a time traveling experience. You can go to the past and see, hey, what did my project look like in September, right? So I think these are visualizations, apparently one of the huge benefits, and then it has some derivative benefits, as I mentioned earlier. I think a lot of the time it's really to draw people's attention. I think give them back the screen time instead of having their heads down. I've been to some look-ahead meetings on the job site. Basically, it can be a group of, I would say you have your superintendent's foreman in the same room with you, right? Somebody walked in, or somebody has printed a stack of your schedule with updates, whether it's a baseline or, monthly update, right? Like it's in front of everyone. But when the planner or scheduler try to ask this question, so did you guys review it? And then do all the dates look correct?
Can you actually perform it in that period of time?
Yes. And then everybody gets like a stack of paper, because as I mentioned earlier, schedule is not that short. It's like 10,000 tasks. Even if you apply some filter, you just simply cannot. Humans' brains don't work that way, right? You just simply cannot read, or consume and interpret and process that much information right away. So basically, you get, I think the project I went to, they got very awkward silence. Nobody said anything, right? But once they have the 3-week look ahead in a different format, it's just a different format. It's just a different ways of presenting the data that you have, right? Whether it's through some visualization or some printed hundreds of rows of activities. It's just when you look at the data, or when you look at the 4D BIM model, or look at your plan in a different way, you get different feedback. So people start to talk. Hey, I'm supposed to work in this area, but where's my material? Where are they right now today? I need to work on it next week, right? Where's my stuff? So that's just, I think people don't realize that we live in a 3D, 4D world, right? It's just more natural and to get people start to talk, collaborate, some derivative benefits. We can probably talk more into it, but I think that's just I think my takeaway on this.
Yeah, and Hunter, I think what would be really interesting too in the future is schedules have always been hard to put together. Jacqueline, brought that up, and it takes a lot of experience from a lot of different people to try to put a really good schedule together. From both of yours perspective, and Hunter, we'll start with you, do you think that 4D BIM could be used in the future to help develop the schedule of another project? Not just the project that you're trying to tie to, but let's say now it took this much time to do this similar task. Why can't we use that in the future to help us create the schedule?
I agree, yeah. And I think that goes to the communication between the teams on, whether it's your estimating teams or your VDC groups, being able to take the lessons learned from other projects and have that impact how you plan for, similar tasks on different projects in the future. It's all a part of a continued learning process where you're not just saying, well, this is what we scheduled it for the last project, and so we're just going to put that same information in. Now that we have this loop where we can continue to learn, we need to be able to take those learnings from the planned and actual and bring it into the latest project that we're going to work on, and continue to bring more clarity to exactly how we want to plan out the schedule. Because if we're just blind to the fact that it wasn't possible to do it then, through maybe not just a set of circumstances as poor weather on site or external factors, but it just wasn't physically possible, you've got to be able to take those changes and make some updates and learn from that. So it's communication and being able to learn, which really are going to allow us to build more effectively and just be honest with how we can actually accomplish a task.
Jacqueline, from your perspective, what do you feel on that front?
Yeah, so I think I totally agree with you when you mentioned, I think your I think the implication, or what I got from, I think your point of view is really, can we be smarter, right? So I think certainly there's already, I think AI powered this, there's already vendor claiming that space, uh, but I think we need to do better, really. We If you look at construction, it's a lot of data, right? It's a lot of data capture. It's a lot of data to, I think, to collect. Um, so if we can reuse those production rates and then not only be smart about, I think the current solution in the market is that they probably can do some AI for uh, linear projects with a lot of repetitive tasks. But I think that's not our end goal, right? So we want some automation of schedule creation based on the historic data that we have. Find some similar projects in the past, and then connect to the company's production rate kind of a system, read those and then feed those data into your schedule, and then make your kind of planning scheduling process more intelligent, right? Avoid some human input, right? For example, with your BIM model, you already know the physical location of those elements. Some are like you already know the physical constraints. Why can't we automate this process and then do some what if analysis scenarios based on what we already know, what's like coded in the model, but don't ask us to input those information again and then just spend all the time set it up. And I think that's the direction that I would like to see, in my opinion. What do you think, Cody? Would
Yeah,
you agree?
I completely agree. And I think it leads into another conversation, which in the past, 4D BIM has always been static to the model in the building. But
Mhm.
today, you're using it for infrastructure projects, you're using it for building projects. And for us to effectively do that, it has to be geolocated on the earth. And I
Right,
think
right.
that's a major point. Like, what if scenarios can't start unless you really truly understand the location of where it's going to be put. And that was my next conversation, Jacqueline, is
Mm-hmm.
what
Okay,
you're
so
doing with geolocation in that.
yeah, geolocation, it's a great topic, right? So we're now gradually entering this kind of discussion of geospatial data and maps and terrains and topology, those kind of stuff. So I see great power of geolocating the model, right? So we all know, coming from um, the experience with the building sector, apparently you will be able to geolocate your model. But what does that bring to you? What are the benefits, right? So um, when I open a 4D bit model on my screen today, if it has the correct geolocation information, I can turn on additional layers. I will be able to see Bing Map, or what's the other one called? So different map services providers from that. I will be able to understand as my project continues, whether I will be able to address some of the what are the kind of the risks and constraints, right? So if I move from, you know, where's west to east with my construction direction is over there, do I have any blockage? And do I have a more of a kind of a crowded area, right? Do my trade partners, would they have any conflict? Um, and it brings great benefits for you, the geolocation of the 40 BIM model. It just adds, we continue to add additional layer of information to support our decision-making process, right? I will be able to understand whether my current approach is the right approach after I start to look at what's the existing conditions look like, what are my site surroundings, Will I be blocked by any, existing utilities, right? That's also a big factor when you work on roadway, linear projects. And where can I have my materials laid down? Um, where do I move or stage my large equipments, and then how do they enter? Where's my um, construction entrance? Where's the gate? So I think that's where geolocation plays an important role. It just helps in the process and brings more benefits, um, yeah, to the 4D BIM model.
And I also think, Hunter, the geolocation is really important, but also not just the existing condition, but as it changes. I
Yes,
think
as it changes.
as the advent, Jacqueline and Hunter, of different reality capture, whether
Yep.
it's static 360 photos, in photogrammetry practices, or drones, or from planes. I think that's a major aspect of not only seeing the existing condition, but also bringing that data into that and supplementing that as it changes.
Yeah, keep feeding what it looks like, right?
Yes,
So yes, totally.
and
And
it
I think
becomes a smart model, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hunter, you get this idea that as the building is being built, you can then turn all that data over to the owner and to the city and to this world so that they can make better decisions into the future.
absolutely. And I think there's two other aspects that I do want to address, and one that's always talked about is safety, being able to see, uh, you know, like Jacqueline was saying, where you're going to be bringing equipment on site, where you have blockages, and if you can identify points that might cause like a safety hazard, being able to see that, not only just, when you see a model, it gives you a lot of information, but then, like you're saying, adding those layers on, whether that's, point clouds that you can overlay onto the onto the model so that you can see exactly what you need, or it's just a geolocation service like Big Maps, being able to use that from a safety perspective, but then also a cost savings, because if you need to make multiple different moves to your cranes throughout the process, versus if we found one spot where it can access multiple different lifts throughout the life cycle of the project, that's going to save us a lot of time. It's going to give us a lot of benefit of being able to see that in the real world, but it's the digital the digital life cycle of that project, being able to see that ahead of time and be predictive and forward thinking. I think safety and cost savings are really two big aspects of the geolocation that probably are its biggest benefits to it as well.
Yeah, and I think logistically too, we always have looked at logistics as a static format. It's the same thing with procurement, and they go hand in hand. And so if you have a static environment, that's great, but it's just for that one period of time. We want to be able to look at and use the 4D model to be able to help us logistically plan our building, not just actually constructing the building, but pieces of equipment, whether it be cranes or different types of dump trucks or anything that you need to build the project, and understand the procurement of how we're going to bring things to the site and out of the site safely. And I think that's a major point to discuss. That's to discuss.
So I think when I think of procurement, so on the schedule, Cody's gonna laugh, I think. Sometimes it's just only few tasks in the schedule that says procurement something, right? So yes. But it's a very important aspect, because without procurement in the right process, how are you going to build it without the materials and equipment and even labor, right? How are you going to acquire them? Um, so I think with empowered by the 4D model, apparently, folks have better understanding of what's coming up, And especially in the pre-construction phase, right? You're supposed to get ready, right? Not to wait till the last minute. And now you don't have excuses because you can see better with the 4D model. Um, so there's different ways of planning apparently with the 4D BIM model, with what you can see right now on the screen or on your tablet or your phone. You can pretty much I've seen adoption in this area. You can pretty much introduce something called pull planning, right? Based on the date that it'll be installed, can you go backwards and then get like the time when it'll be delivered with the process of you need time. Some specialty equipment or some specialty items may require longer lead time, right? So when you're gonna place the order, so it really reminds them and then help them to, hey, it's like it's the light bulb moment, right? So basically, it finally registers and clicks in their mind that certain things has to be done before you get to this step, right? The other side of the, I think the procurement, it related to I think the construction approaches that we finally decide, right? So with the different means and methods that we eventually select, you can really be, I think, more sustainable with your process. You have the opportunity, since now you have the opportunity to plan better, maybe you'll be able to choose some different materials that has less, I think that has less environmental impact, right? Maybe selecting some different materials other than the ones that we are trying to use, that's renewable and green. Yes, I think that's where we can also bring positive impact, and not to forget that with the large equipment, right? With the cranes, you may have to move the cranes across, different phases to set up like a 250-ton mobile crane on the job site is not easy work. How you're going to acquire that crane, and then with all the considerations of site logistics and the construction vehicle traveling path simulated, I think you have a more in-depth and detailed understanding of how it will be digitally, and physically delivered, right? So
yeah, and most projects are not built on a site that's in the middle of nowhere. They're typically built in big cities, and there's
industrial
outside.
though.
Yeah, that's true. Out and and you have to understand the logistics of how all that's going to play into
right.
how that comes about. It's not just the schedule of building the building. It's how all the different things come to the site and how it's being used. Which leads me into this conversation. We have always looked at this space a little bit statically. And I think one of the things that I think in the future that could be really interesting, get both of your takes on this, is bringing a more dynamic reality capture into it. And this is the advent of something that's been around for a long time, which is construction cameras. How can we take the advent of something dynamic like a construction camera and integrate that with something like the 4D BIM that Synchro provides?
We're already seeing it be done, on many construction sites, being able to see, with the different construction cameras that you can see, Bentley's got a strong tie-in relationship with Evercam, and having the 4D view where you can see exactly what's happening on site, and your model can be, overlaid with it, and you can scrub side to side, understand with the 4D schedule where it's, where the project's supposed to be at, and being able to see, where it should be and where it is currently because of these construction cameras. And that's really giving a good visual representation to people who might not be on site or might not have an idea of where exactly they are. And so it's opening the vision to what's happening on site to more than those who are seeing it on a day-to-day basis.
Jacqueline, from your perspective.
So I think I'll talk a little bit about my first time, my first experience with I think reality capture in that space. I think it was almost 10 years ago. I worked on a project that actually has a lot of point cloud data. And then back then there was already tools to convert the point cloud data to the virtual model. However, apparently, human input is needed. So that was kind of my, I guess, first time experience. Before that, we did some scanning when I was doing my graduate program at Carnegie Mellon. So it was fun. So we had to scan the interior of a newly built department. So we have to set the at different stations and then collect all the data. But it was labor, I would say labor intensive, because you got to be with the be with the scanner. Okay, so yes, dive a little bit into this reality capture topic, because I think it introduces, I think, more into this 4D BIM space, because now if you have been collecting data, right, via cameras, via LiDAR, or anything. Let's talk about camera a little bit. You're collecting all those photogrammetry information, and you can pretty much take images 24/7 if you want to, right? A huge amount of data, and then it's also associated with time, right? Imagine that you can have a playback of your project. How it's actually being built, right? The difference between before and after, right? And align that with your 4D BIM model, right? So I think if you imagine like a scrubber in the middle and then have like two screens side by side, the experience you will have is that you can overlay the reality on your virtual 4D BIM model, or on the other hand, if you scrub to the right, right? Because I'm picturing that the reality model on the right hand side. So you can the 4D BIM model will be on top of your reality capture, right? So you can have some comparison between your virtual plan or progress versus your reality, right? What's actually happened. I think that's the real power. I would encourage or challenge the, I guess, solution providers, the industry, to spend more efforts on, yes, you get the reality and you have the virtual. Can we be smarter with, I think, the validation process? Can we get rid of the on-screen takeoff and the measurements? Can we do better just like, okay, I have the two, can I just automate the measuring process and then report, one step forward, like reporting the percent complete by elements, right? And then feed that data back to the schedule because your elements are linked to the activities.
And you're actually doing a live QA QC of the schedule and of progress.
Yes, just do better, right? I think that's the direction I want to see. But I am very excited about the advancement in the reality capture space. I would say in the past 5 years, I think a lot of players in this space, and I expect to see some great advancement in the technology.
Yeah, and it's interesting in that front where there's a lot of static and dynamic type situations working, and they're for different reasons. And I think as a whole, that space will be really benefited if they can combine those two together into a platform to help you make better
Yep. So while you were talking, one thing popped up in my mind as well. So I think for the building sector, really, the building projects, no matter what kind of buildings you're trying to work on, one challenge has been seeing through. Because a lot of the times you get the fly-throughs, you get the reality capture, but it's really from the outside. You cannot really advance through or more than the core and shell, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I would also be interested to see. I saw some great features from some of the providers, right? So you get the X-ray that tackles I think one of the biggest challenges. I want to see through. The core and shell's done, right? I want to see what's going on in there. And then I was amazed by the high resolution data that you could get these days from the reality capture model. And what's more important, back to my previous point, is the validation, the QA QC process, how it's going to continue to contribute and try to make our work easier, right? Make our daily walk through all the job site easier with the advancement of technology, apparently. Yes.
Yeah. And this leads me, Hunter, to the conversation you were having earlier, which is surrounding cost. Dynamically, when you see, let's say, concrete trucks coming and going through a site, there's obvious cost there, but what about the overall cost? Whether each of the individual activities have cost associated with them. And how do you think that 4D will assist in the 5D aspects of things?
I think I'd probably want to pass this one off to Jacqueline.
Okay.
She might be able to speak to this a little bit more fluidly.
Yeah, so now we're entering the 5D space. So I am probably biased on this topic because the product I work on has full scheduling capabilities, right? So if you coming from a planning scheduling background myself, I would say, cost is derived by it's a derivative, right? Because apparently, if you focus on the time, hopefully you solve a big part of the cost problems that you may have, right? So that means in my biased kind of view, right? Cost is, again, adding another additional layer to your schedule, but a lot of the times a schedule is not a prerequisite. And if we look at the organizations today, right, I'm always looking at like how we structure today. Estimating is its own department, right?
Mm-hmm.
It varies from company to company and depends on whether you're from the design, construction, or other site, right? So you may have planning scheduling department, right? And then you have BIM VDC, right? And then on top of that, when we deal with the 4D BIM space, you may have someone who's good at animation and rendering that's going to help you out. Yeah, back to the cost topic. In my biased view, when I talk about 5D BIM, it needs to be a cost-loaded schedule. By that, I meant each individual activity will have the associated different types of resources with their cost loaded, and then their material, labor, equipment. In the 4D BIM space and the 4D tools that we develop, we also have a fourth type of resource, which is called space or location, because sometimes you just don't have the workspace that you need to perform the work. Yeah, so that's kind of my biased view of cost. We are developing and we have delivered products in this area that allows user to make the design model that they receive more constructible, right? We have workflows and functionalities that will allow users to keep the original design intent, keep the intact. But in the meantime, we keep adding additional layers of information, we allow users to split the elements into constructible components, right? We know sometimes we get the design model, the slab. I will use the slab as again, as an example. You get the slab model as one piece, but we know that's not how we port on the site, right? So you have this 250 cubic yard or 300 cubic yard limit, right? You have to break them into multiple parts. So, and then additionally, you will be able to assign cost codes and get your quantity takeoff from there. After you apply a unit price, you basically get the material is easy, right? But that's only, I think, 45 or 50% of your total construction cost. So yes, we are tackling some of the problems. I think we want to get better. I think another result you get from the kind of the 5D BIM model is that now you basically associate more data in there. You'll get your curve, right? You can do some earn value management.
On budget, over budget.
Yes, you effectively get your S curve, and then you'll be able to compare your actuals versus your plan from the cost perspective. I think, in my opinion, they're basically the same thing, right? To my original point. You have so much data. You're just looking at different ways to represent, like show the data, tell about the data, right? The model is one kind of way of presenting like your project. When you look at the schedule, that's another way of presenting your project in your means and methods. When you look at your cost, when you prep the estimates, there was a lot of thoughts put into it, right? How many crews would I be used for this item? How many hours, how many man hours, those kind of considerations. It's just a different way of organizing your data, right? Whether it's with the WBS or with, some master format way of organizing the 5D information. Yeah, I hope that answers the question.
No, that's perfect. And I think, Hunter, on your perspective of that, coming from the PN's background, the field management, project management, those connections between the two and how we help, coordinate and look at the constructability of a project like Jacqueline talked about is how I think the 5D really starts to play into the 4D, and you get this better planning. And I kind of wanted to throw that back to you. Where do you see that aspect? Do you see that it's where it needs to be, or do we need to still take a lot of steps forward?
I still think there's a lot of steps forward, if we're honest with ourselves with, the state of 4D BIM, that still has a long way to go. And then to, implement the 5D BIM, and not only, a way to look at the earned value and see how that's, growing over the life cycle of a project as, dump trucks are coming on site, as, beams are being erected, and you're seeing, more and more value being put into, the project on site. Being able to then take that data and say, what does this mean for, the different stakeholders on the project? How is this going to help us in the future as we look at different projects that we're looking to place a bid on? Will this allow for more accurate estimations? I think that's it. We're slowly working towards that, but there are some automated ways to getting that information in there. But to really be able to, learn from that data, and as it grows and gets better, you need to have the communication between the different departments in order to make those even possible for the visualization of the 5D element to bring that to life. So, I think we're on the path there. We've got the systems in place, but to then take it to the level where they're actually being used by the teams, and then grow from there.
And Jacqueline, just to summarize this whole conversation and finish up this episode, what is the future of 4D BIM?
What is the future? Great question. I think we will be hitting looking some self-reflection, right? So I think we want to be more integrated. We want to see more adoption, but more in-depth adoption, right? We're not going to stop at pursuit. We want to see that many of the adopters will utilize the tools and then provide the feedback to vendors or software solution or service providers on how we can just iterate and improve just to help to build a better future for 4D BIM altogether, right? I think we need to do a lot of the tackling of, if you think about it, it is really big data, right? Imagine like how many entry points that you have on a construction job site and how much data you're collecting. We need to do a better job analyze the data, right? It's not an easy job. You want to present the result, and then you want to build the record for your construction projects, and then you also want to analyze better so you can really unleash the power of the data for your future projects, right? We want to be more efficient without a lot of human input. Apparently, we want to be more intelligent. Yes.
Take the
Leveraging
tediousness out of the job of 4D BIM.
Yes.
And putting that power back into the project team to make better decisions.
Right. And from my side, especially from the product side, right, we really emphasize user experience and how we can make this experience much better. The tools are supposed to help you make your job easier, right? So we want to give you the tools so that you can just take it and get your job done, right? And this is going to be a more connected world than ever. There's so many cloud services that we can tap into. It's the models, the 4D BIM model, the 3D BIM model, and the reality model, and everything is just more accessible than before, right? You have it on all sorts of mobile devices that you have, right? It's even on a big screen that you have in the trailer. We want to build this digital twin for construction and have the 4D BIM model as in the construction digital twin, right? As your single source of truth for everything. Now that everything can be stored in the cloud. Really helps I think that it comes down to the decision-making process, right? Like how it can contribute to more informed and I would say more wise decisions, right? With all the data that we have and all the tools. Yeah, that's kind of my my understanding or my view of the future of 4D BIM. Yeah.
And then Hunter, final thoughts?
Being able to allow for, people to see 4D BIM in a different way and then have it actually impact their actual day-to-day is the most effective way to actually have, true adoption. And so, I think there's a lot of growth and that needs to happen, not just from a provider's perspective, but from the contractors. And actually that's where I'd like to kind of toss it back in your court. There's definitely some stigmas and barriers to entries, but as a contractor, where do you see those stigmas, and how do you see we've got the tools available and accessible, and we can continue to integrate them and, build out the platform that we have. But from your perspective, how does it become more digestible? How does it become something that, is used in your everyday, workflow?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. And it comes back to a lot of what both of you have stated. And it's the idea of you got to get the right personnel in the room with the proper experience. You've got to bring this process into what Jacqueline said, the pool planning, the lean construction concepts that we're trying to make the industry more not only sustainable and efficient. And I think with that, you'll see a huge transition from something that has been very tedious to do into something that can accomplish something that is really important in the industry. Try to engage those different concepts with the right people.
Yeah, the right people in the room seems to be always a conversation when I'm working with customers. People and will showcase their work, and teams that have worked together have been able to put the right people in the room together with these tools in order to create a holistic view of how they're going to build something, and it's made massive change within their organization, and then allow them to design and build some of the most unique structures, build in the most cost-effective ways, save a lot of time on these projects through using Bentley tools. And so really having the people around in those teams yields the best result. And so, yeah, I think that's really the game changer. It's always been the people, and it's going to remain the people. Even as technology grows and gets better, it's what do we do with it? How do we make it work for us? Because the technology can't do all the work. It has to give us the ability to work better without getting inundated with a tedious task that actually detracts from what we're trying to do. So how do you keep that growing in the right direction?
And like you said, I think to end the conversation about this it really is truly about the people taking what you are developing and taking some of the tedious of away and putting the power back into the people's hands to run projects and more efficiently is the main focus of where we're trying to go. I want to thank both of you for joining us on this episode. It's been a great conversation. And, thank you all for joining us on the BIM Heroes Podcast.
Thank you too. Thanks for having us.